A quiet breakfast interrupted, news of the Countess and the return of Rosie Harrigan. I still remember the first time I sat through this particular stretch of the Lucy show, though sat through is the wrong phrase entirely. I was a child then, curled on the living room carpet in front of a television that hummed with the soft tube warm glow of a Saturday afternoon, and the opening breakfast scene felt less like an episode beginning than like being invited into a house I already somehow knew. The table is set, the children are present, and Lucy's voice arrives with that unmistakable mixture of maternal fondness and mild exasperation that only Lucille Ball could make simultaneously ordinary and luminous. "It's so nice having breakfast with you children and seeing all your smiling faces," she says, and even now, decades later, the line lands with the quiet force of a remembered kindness. There is nothing grand about it. There is only the everyday music of a woman trying in the middle of a busy morning to hold a moment of domestic peace before the world inevitably intrudes. That intrusion arrives almost at once, and I have always loved how gently the script lets it happen. The children are not rebellious, they are simply honest. One of them apologizes for reading at the table, explaining that it is the only chance they get because the rest of the time they are too busy watching television. The joke is soft, almost apologetic, and yet it carries the entire cultural temperature of 1965 inside it. Television had already become the rival parent. The glowing third presence at every family meal in Lucy's household acknowledges the fact without bitterness. I used to glance at my own mother when this line played, half expecting her to laugh or to frown, and the private recognition always felt like a small conspiracy between the screen and the room. The show never lectures. It simply notices. Sherman is reminded to write to his mother, and the other children are urged to drop her a note as well. Viv has been gone almost a week. The information is given so casually that a first-time viewer might miss its quiet importance. Vivian Bagley is not merely a roommate or a comic foil, she is the other half of the household's emotional architecture. Her absence creates a soft vacuum, and Lucy fills it with the ordinary duties of correspondence and care. I have always found something deeply moving in that small domestic bureaucracy of affection. Letters must still be written, children must still be reminded. The world does not pause simply because one of the adults is away visiting relatives. In later years, when I returned to these episodes as an adult, I began to hear in Lucy's voice a loneliness she never quite names. Viv's absence is temporary, yet the house already feels slightly larger and emptier without her practical presence. Ball plays the moment without underscoring it. She simply keeps moving, keeps talking, keeps the morning going. Then Chris mentions the society column. A countess is coming to Danfield. The word itself is enough to lift the entire breakfast into a different register. A countess, Lucy repeats, and the children's questions follow with perfect childish logic. What's a countess? A female count? The exchange is pure sitcom craftsmanship, clean, rhythmic, and already preparing the ground for the larger comedy of pretension that will occupy the rest of the composite. Yet what I love most is the way Lucy's face, even in a transcript, seems to brighten with recognition before the name is fully spoken. Countess Framboise, former Rosita Harrigan of Danfield. Rosie Harrigan. The name lands like a stone dropped into still water. I used to know her, Lucy says, and the past suddenly opens inside the present. I have watched this recognition scene more times than I can count, and it never loses its quiet electricity. Rosie Harrigan was not merely a school friend, she was the girl who could dribble on the basketball team, the girl who went to Paris while Lucy went to Poughkeepsie. The contrast is delivered with such light self-deprecation that it becomes almost philosophical. Paris versus Poughkeepsie, the glamorous detour versus the ordinary American destination. Lucy never sounds bitter. She sounds like a woman who long ago made peace with the smaller radius of her own life and who can still take genuine pleasure in the larger orbit of someone else's. That capacity for pleasure without envy is one of the quiet miracles of the character Ball created. In an era when so many sitcom women were defined by frustration or competition, Lucy Carmichael is allowed a generous memory. The telegram arrives while the memory is still warm. Arriving in Danfield today, may I stay with you until I get settled? Can't wait to see you. Love and kisses, Rosie Harrigan Framboise. The children's excitement is immediate and unfiltered. A real countess. A full-fledged, full-blooded countess. Danfield society will sit up and take notice. Lucy's response is more complicated, and Ball's performance still vivid even on the page lets us feel the complication without spelling it out. She agrees that Rosie can stay as long as Aunt Viv is away. The practical boundary is set at once. The house is not infinitely elastic. Friendship has limits, even the oldest kind. Yet the agreement is given with warmth, and the children are immediately pressed into service. Clean the upstairs, clean the downstairs, remember to curtsy, remember to bow. The household shifts into a state of ceremonial preparation that is both ridiculous and deeply touching. They are preparing for royalty. Or at least for the idea of royalty, and the idea is powerful enough to reorganize an ordinary morning. I sometimes think this opening sequence contains the entire thesis of the composite that follows. The ordinary world of Lucy Carmichael breakfast children television absent friend local newspaper is interrupted by the arrival of a title, a past, and a mountain of luggage that has not yet even appeared. Prestige enters the domestic sphere, and the domestic sphere must decide how to receive it. The decision is made with a mixture of genuine affection, comic panic, and the stubborn American belief that a clean house and polite children will somehow be equal to any occasion. That belief is both naive and noble. It is the same belief that will later send Lucy and Rosie into a wine-tasting society on empty stomachs, into a charm school scheme, into a health farm, and finally into the chaotic renovation of a ruined estate. Everything begins here at the breakfast table. With a newspaper column and a telegram, and a woman who once chose Poughkeepsie over Paris and has never quite stopped wondering what the other choice might have felt like. There is a particular quality of light I always imagine around this scene. The soft morning light of a 1960s suburban kitchen, the kind that makes chrome toaster and formica table look almost sacred. Ball moves through that light with the physical ease of someone who has performed domesticity so many times that it has become a second language. When she tells the children to be polite, to curtsy, to bow, her body already anticipates the comedy of their attempts. She knows they will overdo it. She knows the Countess will arrive before they are ready. She knows the house will never be clean enough. And still, she issues the instructions with complete sincerity. That sincerity is the secret engine of the entire series. Lucy never plays at caring. She cares even when caring is absurd, even when caring leads directly into disaster. The children's excitement about a real-life, full-fledged, full-blooded countess still makes me smile with something close to tenderness. They have no concept of noble debts or faded European titles. They only know that something extraordinary is about to enter their ordinary house, and the prospect is thrilling. In that thrill I hear an echo of my own childhood response to the show itself. These episodes arrived in my life like unexpected guests, glamorous, slightly ridiculous, full of luggage and stories, and they stayed longer than anyone planned. I have carried them with me across decades, returning to them the way one returns to an old friend who once slept in the spare room and somehow left the house permanently warmer. Even the brief mention of the basketball team carries a surprising emotional charge. Boy, could she dribble. The line is tossed off, yet it paints an entire adolescence in 6 words: 2 girls on a court, one destined for Paris, and the other destined for Danfield, and a life of schemes and children and bank presidents who drive her to distraction. The friendship survived the divergence. That survival is the quiet miracle the rest of the composite will test and ultimately reaffirm. Rosie will arrive, broke, pretentious, and still somehow luminous. Lucy will open the door. The house will fill with luggage and laughter and disaster. And somewhere underneath all of it, the old basketball court will still exist, a shared memory that no amount of noble debt or social climbing can erase. I have always been grateful that the script allows Lucy a moment of pure, uncomplicated gladness when the name Rosie Harrigan is spoken. There is no immediate calculation, no worry about money or space or the opinions of Danfield society. There is only the pleasure of recognition. I used to know her. In that simple past tense lives an entire philosophy of friendship. The past is never entirely past when the right person reappears. The Countess Framboise may be a construction, a title layered over the girl who once dribbled circles around her teammates, but Rosie Harrigan is real, and Lucy's heart opens to her without hesitation. The morning continues. The children are dispatched to clean, the instructions about politeness are repeated, and then before anyone is ready the doorbell sounds or the door opens and the Countess is already there. The script moves with the merciless timing of real life. Preparation is never complete. The extraordinary arrives while the ordinary is still mid-sentence. That is the rhythm these episodes understand better than almost any other sitcom of their era. Life does not wait for the house to be perfect. Life arrives with luggage and a French accent and a telegram that was sent only hours earlier, and the only possible response is to open the door and say the name that still means something. I return to this breakfast scene whenever I need to remember why I fell in love with the Lucy show in the first place. It is not the slapstick that comes later, though I love the slapstick. It is not the elaborate schemes or the wine-soaked disasters or the wallpapered windows. It is this quiet opening, this ordinary table, this woman who can still be surprised by joy when an old friend reappears under a borrowed title. The rest of the composite will test that joy, complicate it, stretch it to the breaking point, and finally prove that it was strong enough to survive every absurdity. But it begins here with cereal and newspapers and the soft announcement that a countess is coming to Danfield and that the countess used to be someone Lucy once knew by a simpler name. Even now, after so many viewings, I feel a small lift in my chest when Chris reads the society column aloud. A countess is coming. Rosie Harrigan is coming home. The house will never be the same, and neither in some quiet way will I. That is the peculiar power of these old episodes. They do not merely entertain. They take up residence. They become part of the furniture of memory the way a familiar kitchen table becomes part of the body that once sat at it. I have lived with Lucy Carmichael's breakfast table for most of my life, and every time the telegram arrives, I am a child again on the carpet, waiting for the door to open and the luggage to begin its long comic procession into the house. The children are told to curtsy and bow. Lucy wants to make a very good impression. She does not yet know that the impression will be mutual, that the Countess will need her as much as she once needed the idea of a Countess, that the next few days and weeks will contain more chaos and more loyalty than either of them could have predicted. She only knows that an old friend is arriving today and that the house must be made ready. In that simple readiness lies the entire generous spirit of the series. The door is open. The table is cleared. The past is welcome, titles and debts and all. I close my eyes, and I am there again, listening to Ball's voice shape the ordinary words into something that still feels like home. It's so nice having breakfast with you children. It was nice. It remains nice. And somewhere inside that niceness, the telegram is already being opened. And the rest of the story, the luggage, the wine, the charm school, the health farm, the ruined mansion, is already beginning to unfold, one comic catastrophe at a time, under the steady, affectionate gaze of a woman who once chose Poughkeepsie and never stopped being glad when Paris came back to visit.